My name is Mallory Brown, and my presentation is on classical conditioning. What is classical conditioning? Classical conditioning is the process in which an automatic conditioned response is paired with a specific stimuli. Ivan Pavlov was a Russian physiologist who discovered classical conditioning through his research in dogs on their digestive system and gastric acids. He began his experiment with the dogs to demonstrate this study. So Pavlov showed that dogs could be conditioned to associate a neutral stimulus with a reflective response by repeatedly pairing the two stimuli together. A lot of Pavlov's work he did not write out, so the information that we do have comes from his doctoral students' dissertations. Here's some terminology to understand, also similar to the one listed in the lecture. Um, Being able to understand that conditioned equals learned is really important. Your unconditioned response is innate and triggered by an unconditioned stimulus. This would be the salivation of the dog. Your unconditioned stimulus triggers an unconditioned response, so your meat powder or food. Your neutral stimulus elicits no response. Your conditioned stimulus is a previously neutral stimulus that has been paired with the unconditioned to yield a response, so the sound of the bell. Your conditioned response is a reaction to the conditioned stimulus, now salivating. Now the dogs begin to salivate to the footsteps instead of the meat powder because they're able to understand that hearing the footsteps knows they will receive the meat powder. Extinction and spontaneous recovery, I will talk a little bit more in the next slide. Understanding that extinction is walking into the pairing of the conditioned response, and when the unconditioned response stops, then the conditioned response gradually declines. So in this slide, these three pictures, the one on the left I feel gives just a good visual representation of the study. The one on the right, top right, shows Pavlov's setup for his experiment. And the one on the bottom right is also similar to the lecture, and it talks a little bit more about spontaneous recovery. So your red section is going to be the acquisition period, and that is when the dog is learning that the footsteps equal the meat powder. Your blue period is the extinction, and that is the footsteps come in and the meat powder is not presented. There's then a 24-hour or so rest period in between the blue and yellow section. So once that 24 period hour is over, the yellow represents the spontaneous recovery, and that is when the individual begins to come back into the room after the 24 hours and the dogs begin to salivate again like no time has passed. So, how we humans use classical conditioning, it can be applied to therapy for phobias. So, a fear response is a great example of classical conditioning. If someone has an encounter with a cat who scratches them as a child, they may develop a fear response to cats, as well as if they've ever been bitten by a dog, they may begin the fear from a dog. These next two are a little bit more positive with dog walking. Walking with the owner then excites the dog. The dog is able to link the owner's actions like getting the leash and getting ready for the walk, which then triggers the dog's excitement. Turning homework into a game makes a child happy. So then the child is able to associate homework with playing games, and doing the homework actually makes the child feel happy. Overall, the classical conditioning is able to show that behavior is learned over time. And these are my sources.